Okay, welcome everyone to this meeting in public of the Worcestershire Acute Hospitals NHS Trust. My name's David Nicholson, I'm the chair. Are there any apologies that we've got for the meeting?
Need to note for the record, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And can I welcome Christine Blanchard, who's there, I can see, yes, give us a wave, Christine, welcome. Her first meeting as Chief Medical Officer. Really great to see you. Looking forward to working with you. I hope you'll be very happy here, but not in a sort of happy, contented way, but in a happy, I'm doing a great job and improving service for patients kind of way. So welcome anyway. And can I welcome back Robert Toole, our Chief Finance Officer, who's been off in hospital, but now is back and raring to go, ready to sort the finances of the organisation and get that deficit done. So thanks, great to see you back.
Thanks, Chair.
And can I also welcome Merlene, get you right, Merlene Watson, who is going to do our patient story for us. And I think Paula will explain the issues around this and how we're going to manage this particularly, I think, important story for us. Paula.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, absolutely welcome to Merlene, and Anna and I will be supporting her through this particular element of the agenda. Merlene will tell us a little bit about her particular experience here at the Trust, but also, more importantly, about how she's going to help us ensure we work further to get people with impairments on their journey through our organisation in a really positive way. So without further ado, I will hand over to Merlene. Merlene's captions are not working, but if you look straight at the screen and talk to her, then she will be able to lip read. But obviously if she can't hear anything, Anna and I will be able to step in to help. So over to you, Merlene.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Technology, you'd have it.
She's frozen, I know.
Yeah.
Anna, could you just... Oh, hang on, she's gone.
That disappeared. Remarkably disappeared.
Here she comes.
I'm back.
She is.
She's back.
I had to feel I'm back. I was checking whether there was a problem with our landline because we keep freezing.
Yes.
And disappearing. So I disappeared to check that the landline was okay, and it is. So to recap, Anna very kindly produced a summary of the patient's story. I'm not going to repeat it because it's so well put together, but there's one thing that hits you when you read it, and that is to do with communication. And communication at a whole range of levels. The data shows that 1 in 5 of the patients that come through your hospitals, that is a huge percentage, and it's a figure that we shouldn't be proud of because that was produced by the World Health Organization a few years ago, and of course now long COVID has produced a lot of patients who have now significant hearing impairment. So in fact that's not going to be 1 in 5. I'd hazard a guess that actually it will be something like 1 in 4, and 1 in 4 at that time was the figure that was going to be hit in 2050. And my thinking is actually that's going to be much earlier than 2050. We're talking about communication in terms of how patients relate to the various situations they find themselves when they come into hospital. And whether that's an inpatient or outpatient, it's really, really important that the communication fits. One of the things that is a hindrance to in hospital is something called the Accessible Information Standard.
Merlene. Anna, we may need to just interject here and start finishing the story off.
Yes. I think I just wanted to say it's been an absolute pleasure. I've been working with Merlene over the past couple of months. We've met face to face, which she really did want to do today. And she's had a few issues, which is a shame, with connection and captions. Communication, as we've heard, is really important, and I think what really struck me is there are some really simple actions that we can do that will support our patients and our carers and our volunteers, but also support our staff was something that we'd discussed together. What we've been working on is some sort of practical solutions. I think what Merlene was just saying a minute ago was the amount of money that's spent or wasted on missed appointments, and this is quite simply from people sitting in departments waiting for appointments and they can't hear their name being called. So this is quite fundamental stuff, and from working with Merlene, it didn't take me very long to think actually there are about 3 really simple things we can do that will make a profound difference. Partly this is about communication, and I think partly this is about visibility. It all ties in with general awareness, and not only empowering our patients but actually empowering our staff to understand. So we're looking at working with Merlene in partnership to develop all of this, and alongside it I'm engaging with our deaf community more widely. Merlene has been focusing specifically to support people who have hearing impairments and who are hard of hearing, but also we have a large local community who are profoundly deaf, and we provide an interpreting service. So it's a good opportunity. So I'll be meeting, I've invited Merlene to come with me to meet in some local deaf cafes, which are both virtual and face-to-face. And that's happening over the next kind of 4 to 5 weeks. We're going to develop a top tips awareness pack, which is I'm calling it these 3 things at the moment, and quite simply is 3 really simple actions we can take. We have hearing loops across our trust. We should do that. We do that. What we don't do is know how to turn them on if they've been turned off, and we don't test them. So we've got some really simple ways of ensuring that people don't unplug them. Quite simply, they are unplugged. As with Merlene's case, there was a hearing loop in her appointment in the department. It had been unplugged to switch on a mobile phone or a vacuum cleaner and hadn't been plugged back in. Staff didn't really know whether they should plug it in or really how it worked. It all looks really complicated. It is a really, really simple piece of kit. And actually, we can get a simple testing kit that takes a couple of seconds to just make sure it's all working. All we need to do is make sure that staff test it every week, and we have some spare test kits which we'll keep in PALS. To ensure that people know their names are being called, we can welcome assistance dogs in our hospitals by having clear signage to say that we welcome assistance dogs, and we can encourage staff to write people's names on a board. It's quite as simple as that. And finally, there are packs of resources which we can get our hands on, working with Hearing Dogs UK, with loads of resources already provided, which include quite simple little sort of plaques, cardboard plaques, that you can put on the bedside to say, I am profoundly deaf, or I am hard of hearing. these are some things you can do to communicate with me. What we found is there's a bit of fear from staff not really knowing how to communicate with someone who's deaf, suddenly thinking that perhaps an interpreter is needed and how to book this, but actually that isn't always the case. Merlene, I'm trying to do a job for you here. I don't know how well I'm doing. You're back with us.
Yes, it's a bit frustrating at this end, but never mind. Stop me in full flow, but I bet you had a better conversation together than without me.
No,
so
we
Merlene, we have got.
Okay.
Merlene.
Yes.
We have got quite a way down the route with that, Anna, as to what she wanted to say and what you wanted to say. So I think if you can just sort of sum up, and then the board can ask questions.
I have no sound. Do you have sound?
We can hear you, Merlene.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Okay. In summary, it's to do with communication.
Yes.
It's to do with communication with the patients from everybody. And by everybody, I'm going right the way from volunteers through management to consultants, to senior consultants, and actually to yourselves as a board. Celebrating best practice. Once you can have some best practice that you can actually use to encourage other parts of your hospitals to take part. Getting people to talk to one another, because they're the ones that are going to come up with the answers. We may be able to give them a little bit. Simple things like, for example, the way that operating theatres work, basic systems that they are all involved with. In a hospital I was working with the other year, there was an enormous discrepancy, and they hadn't realised it because they were all in their little domain. So getting people to talk about how they go about doing things. The sensory impairment agenda is a very challenging one. We've got 1 in 5 for hidden disability, 1 in 30 for sight, 1 in 50 for mobility. So that puts the hearing loss into huge context and across your hospitals. There is a lot of help available. I have access to quite a bit of it. Some of it is really simple and straightforward and would just involve nipping out to a shop and getting some very simple things like the same colour boxes to put hearing aids in across the hospital. That's not expensive, but it's very straightforward. And the pink box, or whatever it is, then becomes what everybody realises is the hearing aid box. But a funny feeling the tooth box might follow, by the way. But it's not an expensive job. We're talking about hearing loops that people can use bedside. We're talking about information which can be put along the bedside that makes people aware that that person has a hearing impairment, and general awareness raising through hearing through the training for deaf awareness. That's it in a nutshell. I'm sorry I lost you, and I've lost my flow a little bit as a result of that. But I'm sure that you've sort of got the picture. It's not an expensive fix. It will be nowhere. Your Treasury gentleman can breathe a bit of a sigh of relief.
This is such a shame.
I'm back. If you can produce excellent service for your hearing impaired patients, whether they're inpatients or outpatients, you will automatically be producing excellent service for everybody else. You won't have one nurse going to one patient and behaving in one way and then going to another patient and working in a completely different way. So it's a wonderful opportunity to look at the quality of communication with patients across the board. And that means that not just the hearing impaired patients will get an improvement, but you'll see improvement everywhere. And I'm going to rest my case on that because I daren't hang around for too long because I shall be cut off again.
Thank
I'm
you.
happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you, Merlin. Can people raise their hands if they want to ask a question? So, Wakar.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of what Merlin has said, I really connect with that because I have hearing impairment myself. I have 2 hearing aids which I wear, and it's something that's not visible. It is a disability that's not very visible. And I just wonder, in terms of Anna, what you were saying, which was that, basic things such as, in terms of hearing loops, if somebody has switched off the switch, whether people are trained to make sure that they switch it, the cleaner has switched off. But I know that when appointments are sent, in the letter, it does mention that if you have any disability or if you have special needs or anything, then please let us know. Is that followed through to reception when you check in, that reception staff ask whether you have particular requirement, and if so, if they identify there's a person with hearing impairment, then that reception staff then lets the other staff, the nurses or the doctors, know that this is what the situation. Do we do that, Anna?
We do, but I think from the conversation with Merlin, it appears that we are not always as proactive as we could be.
I think the other thing to bear in mind with that is that hearing impairment, we all apologise for. I'm very sorry I can't hear you. You won't actually have an apology for a sight impaired person saying, I'm very sorry I can't see you. And the data shows that people wait between 5 and 10 years after being prodded for all that length of time by family and friends because they're recognising that person has a hearing impairment. 10 years of going into somewhere and not actually understanding what's going on. People don't like to admit that they're deaf. They always apologise, and I have to say gentlemen are more likely not to be wearing their hearing aids or admitting that they have a hearing impairment than ladies. But it is a problem.
Thanks. Anita.
Thank you, Chair. Merlin, again, we was chatting before the start, but thank you so much for sharing this. And I have to say, I am flabbergasted. Such simple things as a cleaner switching in a vacuum cleaner could mean that the loop isn't working. That's really shocking to me. So I think this has been really helpful and really appreciate your help going forward. I guess my question to Anna and Paula and the team is that are we systematically reviewing all our differently abled patients and service users to check that there aren't these silly things happening that we could do? Because as Merlin has said, these things, or Anna has said, these things they're not rocket science. They're not going to cost us a lot of money, and they're relatively easy to do. And if these are things that are affecting those who are hearing impaired, I'm wondering about blind or neuro disability or others. Are we systematically reviewing all our differently abled service users to check that this sort of silly stuff is going wrong and that we could fix? Thanks.
Shall I answer, Paula, first? Yeah. I think there's more we can do. We've made a start. So we have started with Access Able. We'll be launching live in the next few months. So that's our start. and has given us a blueprint for some areas to focus some attention on going forwards. We've, I think, historically focused more reactively, so information that's come through, as with Merlene, through our pals, and we have reacted quickly but not proactively. We have focused a lot of attention on our interpreting and translation, and we have made some great strides for visual impairments, but I think we'll be I think the information that comes out when we review our Access Able guides will enable us to develop more of a proactive framework and approach.
Okay, any other questions? Do you want to say anything about this, Simon, from Health Watch?
I'd just like to say that thank Merlene for her story. Actually say, we recognise how important this is. It's always on our agenda. We're with Action Deafness next week. I'm meeting with their guys. The only thing I would say is, to my knowledge, and I guess I've been around the trust longer than probably most people on this call now, having been involved in Health Watch since inception in 2012, the trust has been here before. So really like to see you nail it this time. And give effect to, and there's always different issues being raised, and guess some of the issues are more technical now, with the idea of the hearing loop not working because somebody's interfered with it, but to actually see you really nail it this time. So yeah, congratulations for taking it on and tackling it. And what we need, Merlene, is for you to come back in 12 months time, give us your view of how things have moved on. You can do that.
Just to add, Simon, we're working. We're really lucky. We're working in close partnership with Merlene, so I hope she doesn't go anywhere and come back in 12 months' time, because we're meeting up weekly. But yeah, I get your sentiment.
Okay, I've got Julie Moore.
I'm in back to school.
You've had your say, Simon. Julie Moore.
Thank you. I mean, I was going to come in on this, but there's several things I am going to say, because we don't need to keep inventing things. It's a shame it got to the stage of somebody having a problem before this happened. How are we using the patient survey to identify problems, and why don't we, if we don't do it already? Have we not got patient groups set up for people with special needs of any kind whatsoever to feed into the trust? And number two, every time we buy a piece of kit, if it's going to be essential, there's a simple little sticker. I don't know who's responsible for the state. Robert, it's probably you, because your first day back, so they'll land it with you anyway. You put a sticker on it saying essential medical equipment, do not unplug. There's a whole pile of stuff that just needs to be done. We don't need to go about hardwiring stuff. We just need a red sticker on saying leave it plugged in. There's quite a lot could have been done. I've enjoyed is the wrong word, but Merlene articulated it so well this morning. But I'm really sorry that she had to experience problems for it to get to us in this way.
I totally agree, Julie, that Merlene had to put pen to paper to explain the poor experience she had whilst visiting one of our departments. But as we always say, there's always room for learning, and that's exactly what we're going to do. And yes, we will pick up any of those issues through the patient survey, and we do have certain groups. I don't think we have enough, and we are certainly working on that. And we will be able to put those stickers that says, please do not unplug. I agree.
Thanks for that. Merlene, I'm going to wind up the session now. Is there anything finally you want to leave us with?
Merlene, can you hear us? She's lost the sound.
Well, okay. Well, from my perspective, for the record, and I don't know whether Merlene can hear this or not, but for the record, can I add my apologies for the experience that you've had at working with our organisation. We didn't reach the standards that we'd all want to reach, so I genuinely am sorry for that. But one of the reasons we have the patient story as at the beginning of the board meeting is to ground us in the reality of what's actually happening in our organisation. Sometimes we can get carried away with reports and conversations, but actually to have it rooted with real patient experience is really important. And the second thing about all of that is that we then need to do something about it. And thank you very much, Merlin, for offering to work with us over the next period to enable us to get into a much better place. I mean, I do believe that in the trust there are quite a number of people who are very keen and interested in this issue, and I know, you know, in terms of learning sign language and all that, there's a, you know, a really dedicated band of our staff who really want to make a difference here, but clearly not enough and not systematically. And so I think that's a really important thing that you've said. And we do need, with you and Anna and Paula and the team, to come up with a programme of work to put this right, as part of a wider approach from the Trust, which will come out of the Access Able work that we are going to do. And I do think it would be a very useful thing for us as a board. I mean, I know Simon really helpfully invited you back to the board in 12 months' time. And obviously that, you know, we want more of you than that, and you'll be working with Anna and people in the meantime, but it would be good for us if we schedule in 12 months' time for you to come back and give us, you know, marks out of 10 for whether you think we've actually taken up these issues and actually delivered them in practice. So thank you very much, Merlin, and I'm sorry about the connection.
Oh, don't worry. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Merlin.
Bye.
Very good. Okay. Let's then move on to items of any other business. Are there any that I need to schedule in at the end of all of this? No. Declarations of interest on the website. Minutes of the previous meeting. Are they a reasonable reflection? Any issues with them? We happy? Simon?
Thanks, David. I just had a recollection that under the COVID item, we discussed the innovations and changes that had been made to working practices because of COVID, and that we were going to capture those somehow. I made a note to myself that something was supposed to be coming to this meeting. I don't think it is in the papers, but we had that discussion about new ways of working, and just sort of note in the context of the government's extra money being given to GPs today to increase face-to-face consultations, an important thing in itself. But one of the innovations for primary care was that a lot of stuff did go online, which made the system more efficient. So I'm just wondering, have we captured those things that we said we were going to do differently as a result of the innovations that came through COVID?
To be honest, Simon, my memory is not completely as sharp as yours in this. I mean, Joe will be able to help us, or someone will be able to help us in all of this, because that we do have 10 high impact changes that came out of the COVID thing that have been part of the planning going forward. But I think Matthew's going to help us on this. Matthew.
Yeah, sorry, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Simon, for raising it. And unfortunately, I think some of the discussions we've had aboard about the 10 high impact changes that came out of Wave are learning from Wave 1 of COVID. I think perhaps predates your time. I'm sure Joe will want to add some comments, but certainly the high impact changes are playing into the development of our 3-year plan. But they're also very much live in relation to the way in which we've learned to enhance and develop the health and well-being offer for staff. Some of the changes that we saw that benefited us from an urgent emergency care perspective during the period between waves 1 and 2, which of course are continuing to be a challenge during wave 3, partly because of staffing pressures. And also some of the issues that you relate to in terms of face-to-face and remote and agile working are very much part of what we're actually actively doing at the moment. So how we take those forward and embed them, make sure that they're sustainable in the way in which we organise ourselves is a very live conversation and is very much playing into the development of our plan for next year and the following 2 years. Jo, do you want to add additional comments there?
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. I think you've covered most of the bases. And Simon, I think this is in part a little bit of a timings issue, because we were waiting to see from the planning guidance. We knew there was going to be some commentary around particularly outpatients and some of the patient-initiated follow-up work. So we've now received that. And in fact, I was just talking to the clinical lead outpatients just yesterday about how we're going to take that bit forward. So I think we both need to understand where we've got to, but it's also just doing a little bit of a stock take about how we want to now embed these, because they're almost now moving into the next phase. So there is something planned, I think, to come to the F&P meeting to be able to discuss that in more detail. But thank you for highlighting, because actually the high impact change is an important part of helping us take some of this work forward.
Okay, let's just make sure then at the next board meeting we have a short note setting out what they are, so that everyone's in the right place to understand them. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. So we approve the minutes. Any the action log. Rebecca, anything on this?
Thank you, Chair. Updates are as per the log. Paula, I believe you've got some updates in respect of the patient property items since the wallpapers were issued.
Thanks, Rebecca. So just on the basis of the two top actions around completely reviewing the patient policy, getting clarity on what is available, making sure that we're linking with Southport and Ormskirk Hospital with regards to patient property boxes, which are yellow. Which goes back to Merlin's point about where do we store hearing aids when they're in theatre. So again, tightening that policy up and making sure that we've got those valuables labelled and that they are securely put in a box in the patient's locker. So a complete review of that patient policy, patient property policy. So I just wanted to make sure that that was actually signed off now.
Thank you. So just moving on to deeper action, the annual plan is as noted, and then Paul, if he's able to be here at this point, let's see.
Yeah, Paul, sorry, I should have mentioned at the beginning, it was Paul may be late to the meeting. He's on the control call at the moment for the system, so he's unable to be here at the moment. But we can follow that.
We can follow that until the actions are complete. There's therefore nothing else outstanding for this meeting.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, Chair, I'm here now.
Yes, Paul. Welcome.
Thank you.
Simon, you've got a question.
Just on the discrimination charter, I note it's been delayed from October to December, and it's proposed to bring it to the board in December. Could we change that it will come to the board in December, because it has been delayed at least twice now?
That's fine, Simon, and the reason for the delay is to just make sure we socialise it as the draft within the organisation before bringing it to board.
Okay, so it will come in December. Very good.
Yes.
Thank you. Good, let's move on then to Chair's report. There are 3 items of Chair's action that are set out in the document: the responsible officer's report, the replacement of a current MRI scanner at Kidderminster, and the procurement for selecting a main contractor for the community diagnostics hub at Kidderminster, which I approved on your behalf for timing purposes. Happy with all of that? Yes, good. I think it's worth pointing out the community diagnostics hub was a fantastic thing for the trust, and a really important bit in the development of Kidderminster Hospital. I think a fantastic addition to help us get the backlog down. So well done for those people who worked on all of that. And my final point is I've just Colin Horwath, I think he's on the call. I've seen his name has been appointed as a non-executive director, having gone through the due process and approved by NHS E&I. So congratulations, Colin, to that. Colin will be taking up responsibilities, particularly for chairing the Quality Governance Committee, We've also appointed an associate non-executive director to replace Colin, a clinician. Unfortunately, I can't announce that yet because it needs to go through the remuneration committee, which is later on today. But a fantastic appointment of a clinician, as is of course the appointment of Colin as a non-executive director. So well done. Okay, let's then move on to Matthew's report.
Thank you, Chair. Draw out a couple of points. Obviously, colleagues will be aware of the #Call Me development following a presentation of the board last meeting, on the meeting before, I think. The team won the Digital Innovation Team of the Year at the BMJ Awards, and obviously to be congratulated. We do have a number of other teams coming to award ceremonies over the course of the next few weeks. We've been shortlisted for award at the Allocate National Conference next week in Manchester, and the Health Service Journal Awards in November. Two of our teams as well. So that's all good news. We're just working through developing policy for how we ensure that members of the team are able to attend on behalf of the organisation. You'll see there reference to the development on the integrated care system, and Joe will pick some of those points up during the paper on the Worcestershire Executive Committee, which is the place-based delivery vehicle for the integrated care system, where we expect the continuing focus on the prevention of ill health and promotion of health and well-being for the people of the county, as well as addressing some of the known quality defects and performance defects that the patients and residents experience, both across mental health, community services, general practice and acute hospital services. The single improvement methodology, which we know is the foundation of our strategic plan on page, our pyramid, is going to be discussed in part 2 today through consideration of the business case, and there's been a number of discussions and stakeholder engagement exercises, as colleagues will know and be involved in. You'll note there a reference to visit to St Richard's Hospice, which was very positive, and we're keen to continue to work closely with our local hospice, particularly again in the context of the place focused delivery of higher quality care, particularly for those at the end of life. And Chair, also just to echo your welcome to Christine joining us last Thursday. So she's had now her first full week of induction into the organisation. She's still here, so that's a good sign, I think. And then finally, just to note, Chair, that overnight we made a small step for man, but a major step for the organisation in the move across to the new up-to-date hardware for our patient administration system, which is the precursor to the upgrade of the patient administration system, which is scheduled for January. Again, as platforms colleagues will know, to the development of the digital care record. Overnight, the changeover went extraordinarily well, and this, I think, was an example of us doing ordinary things extraordinarily well, and there being no impact on operational delivery, which is obviously the key factor in any significant IT change. So I thought it was important to bring the board up to date on that particular issue. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thanks, Matthew. Colin.
Thank you, Chair. Not a question, just an observation. I was involved in the recruitment of some consultants this week earlier, and one of the external candidates referenced the #CallMe initiative. Very impressed, and I think that actually raised the profile of the trust in his sites and perhaps encouraged him to apply. So it just underlines how much benefit sometimes from unexpected sources we can get from raising our profile and telling the world how good we are at doing things.
Absolutely right, Colin. Any other questions or comments people want to make? No, I'll reinforce the point that Colin made. You know, part of part of, as we know, potentially one of the issues that we've had to deal with over the period is a sort of inward-looking organisation that sort of doesn't feel that it's quite as good as others, given that we've been told so often that we're not. And this, you know, the putting in for awards and then actually getting them is an important part of the steps that we need to take, in a sense, to normalisation, to make as an organisation. And I think absolutely the point that Colin makes, if you get a reputation, I mean, who would have imagined, you know, 3 or 4 years ago that we would get the Digital Innovation Team of the Year award in this hospital? It would be unimaginable in those circumstances. So fantastic work from people there, and you know, good luck to all those others that are going through the process at the moment. It's an important part of the rebuilding of our organisation. And on the and I just add my welcome again to Christine. I noticed that it says that when you talk about Christine, people talk about Novichok. I'm sure you're trying to get away from that at one point, but welcome anyway to all of that. And great work on the pass. You know, these things are easy to say, but evidence support. We've all seen examples of where it hasn't worked quite as well. So fantastic work. And we look forward to a similar message in January. Very good. Let's then move on to the Black, Asian and Minority Ethnic Network Progress Report. And is Jazz here?
I am, Sir David. Morning.
Can't see you. Where are you? Oh, there you are. Oh, sorry. That's right. Welcome, Jazz.
Morning. Thank you for inviting us.
No, very happy to do so. You've got an open invitation. If you feel strongly about anything, please feel free to contact us. Now, I don't know, are you going to introduce this, Tina, or are we going to get straight on to Jazz, giving it her?
Straight on to Jazz, if that's okay.
Yeah, fine. So we're all ears, Jazz.
Thank you, Chair. So, morning, colleagues. So, thank you for inviting us. So, I think you've had the report in your pack, so hopefully you've read that. So, I'll just share with you some key highlights in terms of what we've been doing over the last year. So, it's been a busy year. We've been around for a year now, and I've been a chair for about 13 months now. And we've made some really good progress in that time. So, I'm just going to share with you a slide that shows you just what progress we've been making over the last year. So tell me when you can see that slide. Let me make it a bit bigger.
Yep, can see it, Jazz.
So as you can see, that's a huge amount of progress over 12 months. So, you know, we established in June, and over that time we've had 2 really successful webinars that have been really well attended, both locally, regionally, and in some cases nationally, with some really good key speakers. We've supported the vaccination process as a network, trying to engage our BAME colleagues in terms of the uptake. We've looked at reciprocal mentoring. We've taken the knee with the Chief Exec and Simon Murphy, where other trusts in the region didn't take that step. So thank you to Matthew and to Simon for supporting that. And we've seen the shape of the board change in terms of 2 non-execs join us from a BAME background, and Anita now being vice chair. So that just sets the scene in terms of what a good year we've had. And in terms of progress, we've now got 115 members on the network, but just to draw attention that we've only had 15 new members since the 1st of January this year. So attendance is dipping in terms of network attendance for a variety of reasons. You know, we've seen activity rise in the trust, which is affecting attendance, which we would expect to see. And we've had Simon and Anita join us at the network regularly, so thank you to both of you for coming along. And again, visibility is really important in terms of showing our commitment as a senior leadership team to the cause. So again, thank you for coming along, and if others can make it, that would be great too. We know that staff are calling out that they're not always being supported by their line managers to attend network events, so clearly that's a message we need to work on in the organisation. We've got a vacant post as Vice Chair now that Tina's team is helping us in terms of recruiting into. I will be standing down as Chair at the end of March, so we're just working on some succession planning around that and what that looks like. We've had some successes. So Band-Aid appointment process is now an informal process and has been supported by all recruiting managers. And if I just give you some figures, so in 2020, when we had COVID, the number of appointments was low, so we went for 9 appointments that year, 8A and above, and we didn't have any BAME staff that were appointed. This year, we've had 42 appointments from a Band-Aid above, and 7 BAME staff have been appointed. So that shows that there's a level of commitment and understanding and just thinking differently about the debate and the conversations, which is good to see. So there's still work to do about embedding that process in, and that Tina and the team are helping us do. And the next stage will be to formalise that process to support Band 7s and above in the recruiting process, but support our Band 5s with more career coaching to help them reach a Band 6 and get that embedded as a process. And we also want to start working with the nursing teams and our clinical colleagues to see if we can get more clinical colleagues into senior posts. So if I share with you that we've got 2 matrons in the organisation who have a BAME background, and we've got 3 BAME colleagues in clinical director posts, but none in senior leadership posts in the organisation. So clearly there's something to go at and work with our colleagues on there. Reciprocal mentoring. So I know that most of you are engaged in a reciprocal mentoring relationship, and the feedback is that's going really well. So we've got 23 mentors who are trained in the programme. We've now got 20 who are active because 3 BAME colleagues have left the organisation for promotion elsewhere. So of those 20 relationships, I'd say 70 to 80% of them are going really well, and the feedback's been really positive. So if I share with you some of that feedback, you know, people are saying they're getting the opportunity to speak to people who they'd never have got the opportunity to have to build that relationship with otherwise. They're feeling that you're providing a safe environment to speak freely about their experiences and to form a friendship through mutual respect and a clearer view of one another's perspective of working life with trust. They're getting to know you and the roles that you all perform, and it's helping them understand what you're doing, which they're finding helpful, and you're helping them build their own confidence about communicating with people at your level, because you're quite scary. And they're finding it's really good to share their experiences with you into what it's like being a person of colour working in the trust, and hopefully that's helping you shape some of your decision-making thought processes when you're doing your day-to-day work as well. So I just want to say to you, you're making a difference in terms of the contributions that you're making as a senior leadership team, and I want to say thank you on behalf of the network. Clearly, it's a massive journey that we're on. You know, I've used the analogy, we say it's Sir David Behan the other month about being on a train journey. So if any of you have had the torturous journey of going from Worcester to Paddington, it's 15 stops and it takes 2 hours and 48 minutes. And in Worcester, we've got 2 train stations. So I you know, in terms of where we're at, and I'm going to paint a realistic picture of where we're at, we've left Foregate Street, we've reached Shrub Hill, but we've not yet left. And so that, you know, we've still got 12 stops ahead of us, and the boat is rocking. You know, I talk about the boat rocking. We're rocking the boat, which is the right thing to be doing. We're challenging mindsets, hearts and minds, which is right. But I'd urge us all to stay strong on this journey and to show that, you know, we're all committed to it, because it's the right thing to be doing. It's the right thing to be showing staff that we care about them, and that we respect them, and we want them to work in our organisation. And so it helps that recruitment and retention challenge that we're facing as an organisation. So colleagues, thank you for listening. Hopefully I've painted a picture in terms of what we're doing and where we're going. And the draft charter that I know is coming to board in December is, I think, one of the key pivotal moments for the organisation in terms of demonstrating what our tolerance level is to discrimination, i.e. and zero tolerance, and what that behaviour will look like if patients or staff demonstrate any poor behaviours to colleagues or other patients in our organisation. So I'd like to conclude there, Chair. Thank you for that, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Jazz. I've got a number of people who want to ask questions or make comments. Let's start. Can I ask Simon to say something first of all, as our kind of med lead in this area?
Thanks, David. I've thoroughly enjoyed the role, and thanks to Jazz for her leadership of the network and for colleagues who participate in that. I think the observations I'd make is that yes, we have made progress, but that analogy with having left Foregate Street and still being at Shrub Hill is quite appropriate. It's very important that momentum is not lost. This is a long journey we're on, but it can be derailed if we stick with the train analogy, if we take our foot off the pedal, throwing in an appropriate analogy there. But the point needs to be made that we need to keep pushing on with this. This is why I've said, let's have the charter in December, but let's have a charter that's not just a statement of what we will do, but actually explains how we're going to do it. Because I think there is still a risk within trust here that incidents of harassment and bullying are not dealt with quickly enough from a BAME perspective and can be very off-putting for staff. We may need to look at managers having support for how to deal with difficult circumstances, which perhaps in the past they might have just said, well, I don't want to get involved there. We need to support our managers so that they're able to do that. I think also with the 8A process, it's going well, but I think that Trust Management Executive has signed this off yet with its, with all of the detail that goes behind it. I don't think it's come to you yet, Matthew, so if that's not the case, it'd be great to get that signed off. And again, particularly with how we're going to do it. And again, a message needs to go to managers that yes, everybody's under pressure for time, but staff should be released for these things. These are important initiatives that the Trust wants to see take place. I guess my final comment would be about the mentoring scheme. Most of us are really enjoying that. I think for whatever reasons, there's probably about 20% of us who haven't really put the time into this yet, and I appreciate that everybody's very busy, but for those who haven't, please do. It is important. You do learn an awful lot. It's a two-way thing, but if you're not participating, you're not going to feel the benefit of it. So for those who probably know who I'm talking about, please do take part in it. It is very, very important. But I've very much been enjoying my role. And again, thanks to Jazz and colleagues on that BAME network.
Okay, I'll let you have a few words at the end, Jazz, when we've been through all of this. Don't feel you have to. Christine.
Hello, Jazz. It's really nice to meet you, and thank you for your presentation, which I really enjoyed. Just to say that I'm really keen to be involved in the reciprocal mentorship. It's something I've done before and really felt the benefits of. So thank you.
Thanks, Christine. Tina.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to respond to one of the points that Simon raised about the chart, and the reason for us delaying that to December is we've got working with a couple of the divisions to make sure that we've got the systems and processes behind the charter, because there's no point just having a bit of paper. So Amanda Markle, the Divisional Director of Ops, is leading on the No Excuse for Abuse, and we've got really good buying from all the divisions on this task and finish group, and that's to build up the background to the charter, so what actually means if you're on the front line, how you report such abuse, what the support there will be in place and so forth, because Simon's right, we have got a lot of underreporting in that area at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I've got a hand here, but I can't see who it's from. Is there anybody else that I've missed speak or?
Yeah, David, can I please?
All right, Richard.
Yeah. So first of all, I really like this mentoring relationship. I think I learned a lot more than the other way around, and I learned that I really didn't know. Yeah, that's the first thing. So but secondly, in those conversations and also in conversation with Jess, it also became clear that it's not just about attending. It's also the fact that people really don't have time to support the network in developing things, yeah? And otherwise we would have seen more successes on the chart that Jess has shown. And to me the question is, well, why is that? I think there's a genuine time issue that might be maybe COVID related partially. There might be a bit of a cultural issue, not getting the time made available for managers and stuff, but I'd really like to understand why is it, what can we do? about it, because that to me seems one of the practical things we could do as a board to facilitate this better.
Thanks, Richard. And I'll pass to Richard Haynes, and then Jazz can respond, and Tina can respond as well if she wants to. Richard.
Sorry, I'm aware that a number of other colleagues have got hands up, but just it was kind of a follow-up really on the reciprocal mentoring that, you know, from my point of view, it's been a very challenging but also very rewarding experience.
I'm struggling to hear you, Richard. Are other people having the difficulty? There's something wrong.
Right, let me see if I can
just lean forward.
Is that any better?
That's better. We can see your face more better as well.
Not necessarily an improvement then. No, I mean, again, to speak very positively about the reciprocal mentoring scheme, which has been very challenging but very rewarding. Jazz mentioned it as a means of understanding the lived experience of BAME colleagues in the job, but I think as much for me it's about understanding the experience of BAME people in everyday life as well, outside the trust, which has been you know, very painful on occasion to hear, but I think a very rewarding experience, and I hope my mentors have got something out of that as well. So I'd really commend the scheme, and among the many achievements of the BAME network that Jazz has rightly highlighted, I think it's one of the ones that's made the biggest difference for me personally. So thank you, Jazz, and thank you for your leadership of the network.
David, I have had my hand up. Can I come in?
I don't know why I don't get these hands. I only get them when you put your camera on. So I don't understand. So I can't see it. So I'm not trying to stop you speaking, Anita. You know. Okay.
If I could just thank you. Oh, and I think Sharon. Oh, I thought Sharon had her hand up too. But anyway, Jazz. So I just wanted to say a couple of things. I mean, first of all, along with everyone else, that was a really great presentation. Well done. And I think thank you for your leadership. I'm really pleased to see, you know, the progress we've made and your plan. For me, I think there are three things that I would, perhaps in terms of your plan for the next 6 months, that I would really want to focus on. It worries me that membership of the network isn't higher than it is. Others have referenced this, but I think there's a question about what's in it for them. I know everyone's busy, but how can you make it worthwhile? Is it about promoting the reverse mentoring or whatever, but make it something that people think they're going to get something out of? My second thing is absolutely agree that it's key to get that promotion and visibility, and this whole thing about talent identification. Let's identify the superstars that are going to come up for senior leadership, and I know that the trust is working on that, but your support and the support of the network will be really important. The third thing, I think you know I'm really involved with Freedom to Speak Up, and I actually recently wrote the presentation for the HSJ Awards. And one of the things that really shocked me was the proportion of concerns that were raised by people of colour. Not very high, nothing like as high as it should be. And I think it really highlights the fact that for all the reasons that I think we could probably guess at, people of colour in this trust do not feel confident to raise concerns. I have made the challenge to Mel Herdman, our Freedom to Speak Up guardian, and I would want to make it to you too. We need to get the BAME network and the Freedom to Speak Up champions working together, because we need to get people to feel confident in that process. We made a lot of progress on BAME, we've made a lot of progress on Freedom to Speak Up, but the proportion of BAME staff making concerns is not high enough. And given what we know anecdotally, there's certainly an issue there, and I'd really encourage you to put some focus into that with Mel. Thanks.
Okay, I've got Sharon, then Tina, then Matthew, then Jazz.
Thank you very much, Chair. Jazz, congratulations on the work that you've done in your leadership in this area and the work that's been carried out. That's quite a lot in 12 months. There's some people that haven't even turned on the engine, let alone got out the station, so well done on that. I echo what Anita said as well in terms of the membership and how can we make people get more involved. And I do have a concern about people not reporting when they're going through issues, because I know myself how difficult that can be, particularly in a work environment. And then I think the final thing for me is about moving forward. How do we get underneath the surface and go a little bit deeper now? I've got a concern around intersectionality. So, you know, it's okay saying BAME people go through this, but actually a BAME woman or a woman in a particular different BAME cultural background, disability, LGBTQ, they all go through very different challenges, and actually sometimes the variations in opportunities can range there as well. So I think we really need to get underneath the surface in the next couple of years and actually look at some of the deeper rooted issues, and not just clubbing BAME all together, because we do have individual challenges as communities.
Thanks. Tina, then Matthew, then Jazz.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond to the point that Richard raised about if it's cultural, and Richard, I believe it is cultural in regards to people's commitment to release colleagues to attend the network and to get some of these actions completed. So I think, you know, for me, it's not just the BAME network's responsibility to get these done, it's all of our responsibilities, and therefore need to have a different approach to this in the organisation. I've had some discussions with WACAR and looking at how we can implement a sort of framework to make it responsibility across all of the directorates, wards, etc., by using something like our rate tool. So we've got must and should do's, you know, as an example. So it's something that we need to work through for people to realise the importance of this agenda for each and every one of us in the organisation. And then the second comment I wanted to make was around, we have seen an increase in the dignity at work concerns raised related to people from a BAME background. They're live cases. I don't want to go into detail on the board, but we have seen an increase over the last couple of months.
Okay, Matthew.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and it follows on really nicely from Tina's point, and again, thanks to Jazz and also to Simon and everybody that's been involved in helping with this really important part of our culture change as an organisation. And I think it's also important for us to redouble our efforts and redouble our focus as a board and as leadership community in being very clear about what is and what isn't acceptable behaviour from the people we employ that have contracts of employment with the organisation, and that we will deal with situations where discrimination of any sort will be dealt with using appropriate processes and will be followed through on. And I think that's the sort of thing that will probably, in addition to Anita's points about what's in it for me, it's also, I think, a number of the key members in our organisation are watching to see what the leadership does in dealing with people that are currently behaving badly. And I think that is also, I think, a key part of the journey to Paddington, to extend Jazz's comments. So I'd be keen to ensure that all board members take every opportunity to ensure that people understand what we're about and what we expect to see in terms of people's behaviour. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, you were almost on then, Jazz, but Wakar has now put his hand up. Wakar.
Thank you, Chair. Just to congratulate Jazz, as many other people have done so, in terms of her leadership and the achievements of the BAME network. So well done, Jazz, and a really excellent presentation. And also, in terms of what Tina and Matthew have said, Chair, that in terms of the BAME network, there's only so much that members of the network can do. And I'm sure that none of us have expectations that the BAME network or any other network will solve all the problems that exist in terms of diversity issues. And therefore, Tina and I have been discussing behind the scenes, and more will come. It's an embryonic stage where how can we ensure that the organization has ownership of diversity and inclusion, that they can relate to this, that it means in terms of diversity, that it's not about BAME people or women, that actually it's about them. And therefore, how can we hold leadership to account and mainstream this issue so that this is integrated within the fabric of the organization. And that's the work that Tina and I have been discussing and working on. So more will come later, Chair.
Thanks, Lakard. Jazz, do you want? You can't respond to all of that. I don't think. But just give us some important messages at the end that you think we need to hear.
So listen, thank you for your feedback, colleagues, and it's good because you're all saying the same thing. It is about you. It's about how you demonstrate that this agenda is really important, how you walk it, how you talk it, how you challenge it every day. And unless you do that and you turn up, everyone else, it will not make a difference to anybody else. So that's really good to hear. And it's about how do we make that happen, and how do we as leaders show the organisation that we mean this and that we do want to change. I think that ownership and accountability is really important. So I know Matthew's challenged the digital department around where are we on the EDI agenda. So Matthew, we've developed an EDI dashboard that I'd love to see as part of all the PRMs going forward that demonstrates, well, okay, what are divisions doing around the Bay Mate appointments? Where are we about network membership, etc.? So hopefully that will start to have drive some of those conversations that Matthew and Paul have with each of the divisions. The reverse mentoring, Anita, you're absolutely right. We talked about it at the BAME Network this week and at the comms meeting this week, and so we're linking in with Richard's team about what difference is reverse mentoring making to me as an individual, and what are you getting out of it as a colleague to try and get that membership going up, because we want everyone to have a reverse mentor in place to be part of the programme. Because I think if you understand it, and I think there's a bit of training that we do need to do for colleagues on the gallery about what's your role in it, what's the challenging questions that you need to be asking, and not averting or diverting or not being brave enough to ask those questions. And how do we give you those skills and those techniques and the questions to delve a little bit deeper? So I think with that, we'll take that on board, and you're right, it's about how do we make, as a collective, drive this agenda forward, and how it's not just every year I come and talk to you and it becomes a conversation, but how do we embed this going forward? So thank you for listening, and thank you for your contributions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, well, thanks for that, Jazz. A really, a good report, but I think you kind of framed it really well in terms of where we are on our journey. I think there are 2 or 3 observations I would make about that journey. The first one is that we shouldn't be too tardy about getting there. Everyone's on a journey, aren't they? And if you're not careful, you kind of get to a place where you lose a sense of urgency about all of this, because there is a sense of urgency to get this right, not only from the perspective of doing the right with that for our people, but also, being an organisation, the recruitment and retention of our people is going to be vital to our delivery as an organisation. So this is not a theoretical question and often organisations fail here because they don't have the consistency of purpose that you need to have. And that's why I think we should all be worried about the membership of the BAME group and their change. As you said, Jack, changing the chair are all places where you can lose momentum, or that you can basically think we've done that, we'll tick that, we'll go off and do something else. And that's why it's so important for the board to be absolutely solid on all of that. And as we go through that solidity, we need to sort of be slightly more sophisticated about the way that we deal with it. And that's why Sharon's point, I think, is really well made about intersectionality and how we kind of connect all of these things together. It's really important that people attend the BAME network. It would be a fantastic thing, wouldn't it, if frontline managers would boast about the number of people in their teams that were going to the BAME network. It was seen as a good reflection on them as leaders that the people were, and that's where I think we need to get to in all of this to make that to make that happen. But Anything that you think more we can do, we're happy to do. We do recognise it's our responsibility. I think I'm particularly anxious about the senior leadership of the organisation, the 8A and above, because in a sense that's where we're going to grow the executive directors of the future, and we as a board I think are going to spend a bit of time on succession planning to make sure that we're spotting talent and engaging and involving that talent in a process to make that happen, because that's an important part that we as a board specifically I think can do. And just to reinforce Matthew's position I think on all of this, you know, poor behaviour in this field is completely unacceptable, absolutely unacceptable, and we expect, you know, people in the organisation to take action to put it right and not to let it drag on or not be dealt with. So thanks very much, Jazz, for all the work that you've done and the way you manage us. It's always very interesting to see the way you kind of, you know. Thank you. Thanks for that. You're doing very, very skillfully, and we look forward to the next report. And again, doing everything that we can in the interim to make people feel as if they're a valued part of the team delivering healthcare, and that they want to go forward with this organisation. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Kate. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Okay, thank you. Let's then move on to the Worcestershire Executive Committee Memorandum.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a short paper, and if I may, I just wanted to give 3 points in terms of context for it, because it is designed really to give assurance to the board as we go through transition to April 22 with ICS developments, of which the Worcestershire Executive Committee is a key part, as this is our place agenda. So I think first off, you'll have noted in the Chief Exec's report, there's a huge amount of activity and work underway at the moment in terms of developing the ICS at all levels. And as we move towards that operating model, we just need to make sure that the governance is fit for purpose in terms of any decision making that's made. We've, as a board, been looking at some development about our role within that, and we'll have those discussions in other fora as we sort of move through this next phase. And in October, November, there are some engagement events for members of the Worcestershire Executive Committee and the Health and Wellbeing Board to think about their various roles as we go forward. The second point I just wanted to highlight in the report is actually that the Executive Committee is an executive committee, so the non-exec chairing has been removed. And the third point is just to note that Ruth Lemiak, who is currently Director of Strategy for the Hereford and Worcestershire CCG, has been appointed as the Place Development Director. So she's taking a leading role now to help this transition of the Worcestershire Executive Committee in place into the new world. So they're the 3 points I just wanted to make, Chair. Rebecca, I just wanted to give her thanks for her advice in terms of preparing the paper, and obviously happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks. Simon.
Thanks, Joe. Just a couple of observations and questions. First one, I note from the terms of reference that there are no binding decisions yet, so I'm assuming that we're expecting that to go sort of towards April of next year as the system starts to bed down. Just a minor point, are there any problems with the quorum? I know the quoracy there is everybody who's entitled to vote, and it just seemed, I don't know whether there's an issue there that might cause some difficulties if people are not able to get to meetings or send representatives. Final point is on the voluntary and community sector, Joe. Where are we with the Worcestershire VCS? Now, in Matthew's report, he highlighted some of the extra guidance that's come out from government on the ICS, and if anybody gets a chance to read the one on the VCSE, I would recommend them to. It's only a short document. But I think it's very, very important, as is reflected in the guidance from government, that we get this right, and that our voluntary and community sector organisations are in on the ground floor with this, and that they are the right alliance that's come forward, that we're not relying on, you know, perhaps parts of the VCS, which I have seen happen elsewhere, totally understandably, but getting our charities and our independent sector involved in service redesign, in the governance of the new ICS is very, very important. In of themselves, they can bring extra capacity and help us do things that we can't currently do on our own. But very, very importantly, they bring a different perspective And for those of us who are thinking about this all the time, there is a danger that we end up being a bit group thinky, if you like, that it's always been done like this. Having external partners who are fully part of the process is very important. So Joe, I don't know if you could offer us any observations on where we are with BCS participation in the executive and the memorandum going forward.
Thanks,
Chair, would you like me to take questions when I've
do.
collected all the answers? Or?
No, take
Oh,
that.
right, okay. Thank you. Yes. So absolutely, I absolutely agree with you. And the VCS have a seat around the table. We wish to executive committee because clearly we see place as the real engine room for both helping, as Matthew described earlier, reducing the health inequalities, but also in terms of delivery of services. And we've got a very able participant in Carol Camino who actually sits in those discussions. And it's not just in that forum. So we've got integrated well-being theme that sits underneath it, and they're very much part of that as well. And that whole prevention agenda has got a richness in terms of the engagement. Of interest, I think if you talk to Karen as well, where this is going to make a real difference is in the PCN collaborative space. So as the districts work together, so Redditch is a really strong example, but we're getting others across the piece as well. This is where they can really see the material difference they can make close to the ground. So it's making sure we've got the line of sight and linkages between what happens in that district collaborative space and then links into place as well.
Okay, thanks. Colin and then Richard.
Thank you, Chair. The report is headed up, the primary governance framework is a Memorandum of Understanding, and I think I know what a Memorandum of Understanding is, but I wondered if you could clarify, Joe, precisely what the commitments are that the respective signees to the MOU have, how it ensures that there's not more than commitment, that there's accountability and it actually produces action.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm going to hand, if I may, Chair, to Rebecca O'Connor as our technical expert on this, just to...
Thanks, Colin. The Memorandum of Understanding sets out at a high level, in its essence, the rules of engagement. How will we work together whilst we work out what the future decision-making form looks like? So at the moment, the arrangement is very much like Simon pointed out. It isn't binding, and we can't make decisions as partners either on behalf of each other or for each other. It's very much about the accountability of the individuals who are sat at the table using their authority or going back to their respective boards to be able to take some of this forward. Clearly, that doesn't give us some of the pace that you would want as these arrangements change. Hence, this is very much an interim arrangement to enable us to get to a place whereby we will have a clear decision-making arrangement, be it through, there's multiple different options set out in the guidance, through a delegated joint committee, through a lead provider model. So this is very much a halfway house, but it doesn't give us legally or binding commitments on behalf of each other, which is the key point really in terms of decision-making.
I think what it does do, though, I think it draws into sharp relief when Matthew attends on our behalf. What powers are we giving him to make decisions, which you just need to reflect on at some stage in all of this. Okay, Richard.
Yeah, so this partially addressed my question. So first of all, I thought it was good that I saw some changes that focus this more on delivery, which is positive. It's what we need. But I'm equally concerned as Colin that it's all nice to have an intent, but how do we really enforce this? And this is what we see day to day. Yeah? Some of our issues we've got in performance are definitely related to how we work together as partners on the delivery. And so, yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed, Rebecca, to hear that there's no way to really enforce things here. So it's not a question, it's a remark, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't enforce at this point in time until we've got the future form model agreed. And what we're looking at is to understand what that future form model should be. So we're taking real live issues that we've got at the moment. So, for example, in terms of the issues that we've got in urgent and emergency care, which model would give us the levers that we need to help address that collectively as a system, so that the risk isn't then held by here at the Acute Trust and with WMAS, that's then shared across the system. We'll be going through a process to try and unpick that. So we'll look at those examples and say, what's the impact of a particular model or governance arrangement in terms of quality, in terms of patient experience and outcomes and finance, so on and so forth, to then use that. But this is very much the first step on that journey. We've got to have a framework to work now so that we can get to that point in the future.
Joe.
Yeah, I was just going to pick on that as well, because clearly the end state operating model in terms of where we want to get what we need is a muscle we're just exercising now as we start to look at moving home first into the place agenda, as we start to think about the intermediate integrated care pilot that Paul's currently stood up with colleagues at the moment, and actually that builds on that partnership and trust and helps us think about that end state and the governance that we all want when we get there. So as I say, this is, as Rebecca says, a transitional point to keep us sort of safe, but there is work going on outside actively. And when I referenced the development sessions that are happening this month and next month, it's to absolutely get under the skin of some of those models that Rebecca decides, so we can collectively come to what it is we want to be from April next year, which we'll bring back to the board when we have that information.
Okay, thank you. So we, I think broadly, we approve this the proposal set out in here to get on as a first stage to building an effective team at place level. Yeah, agreed. Thank you. Let's then move on then to the integrated performance report. Vicky.
Thank you very much, Chair. So, colleagues, this is the Integrated Performance Report for Review 5, which is August 2021. It's been approved at the September Trust Management Executive Committee and has been through the various subcommittees of the board. There's no change to the overall assurance level on the report, which is at a level of 4, and there's been no changes at all through the assurance levels through the various sections of the report either. Just in terms of the actual report itself, on page 86, we've included some learning from deaths information, which I think colleagues had asked for previously to be included, and also we have the LMS maternity dashboards at page 111 in your pack. From an executive team perspective, we've identified 3 key areas of focus, and there's some detail in the overarching report around the headlines for those key areas. There's been no change to the first 2 from last month, which is the urgent and emergency care and patient flow capacity, constraints and difficulties that we face operationally. Recovery and restoration of the elective programme, including outpatients and diagnostics, and picking through there the waiters that we have at 104 weeks, 78 weeks, and 52 weeks plus. And then we've included stroke, as we've seen a dip in our stroke performance. It's deteriorated through the audit that's been taking place. So I'll stop there, Chair, if I may, and pass through to colleagues if that's appropriate.
I think it's all written out here. I'm not sure whether we need a great, long spiel about all of it. Could we start with stroke first of all, then? What's caused the deterioration, and what needs to be, because we made quite a fuss about moving our SNAP results. What's caused it, and what's going to put it right?
Should I come in, Chair?
Yeah, feel free.
Yeah. So the main cause of the deterioration, and can we just be clear that although Vicky said this referred to month 5, August, that's not the way SNAP works, and the information contained in the report is for Q1, so that's the April to June period. And yes, we deteriorated to a level D, and the fundamental cause of that was a loss of a number of stroke consultants, and during that period we actually reduced to functioning with 1 substantive consultant colleague in the service, and that basically is the cause. In terms of where we are now, we have been working with the stroke network, and we've been, with Tina's help, pushing hard to try and recruit into posts. Whilst we haven't actually recruited substantively into any post, the divisional team, Jasper, Sue and Joe, as I said, with Tina's help, we have now managed to recruit into two locum posts, which are the one started last week and the second starts on the 1st of November. Through the network, we've been able to get existing substantive consultants, predominantly from University Hospital Midlands, Stoke, and we have 4 of their consultants, including their clinical director, giving us direct support. 3 of those colleagues are spending 1 day a week with us, and 1 colleague is spending 2 days a week with us. In addition to that, we've got support from a consultant at University Hospitals Leicester, who's helping cover some weekend activity, and we have agreed a joint post with urology, a joint post with Hereford, and a joint post with University Hospitals Birmingham, and those 3 posts are all going out to advert. In addition to that, we've agreed arrangements to create a nurse consultant post, and that post coincidentally was advertised today. In addition to that, our neurology consultants, particularly Tom Heathfield and Laura Elvis, have been providing support. As colleagues will probably be aware, of, outside of the UK, stroke isn't a separate specialty and is often linked to neurology. So 2 of our neurology colleagues are providing support for TIA cover and clinical cover at the weekends. So from being in quite a challenging, if you like, workforce position in relation to medical staff, we're now in a significantly improved position, particularly with that support from colleagues in Stoke. And we have already heard that there's a couple of colleagues who could be interested in the joint posts that were just out to advert at the moment. I should add that the team, and it's been recognised by the network, that our stroke therapy and nursing team are excellent, and the service provided on the ward, notwithstanding the medical challenges, is viewed as externally, and that we've had members of the IDN down on the ward who were exceptionally complimentary. And in terms of where we sit today, then next week is when we submit the Q2 report, so the July to September. But having had a look at it, whilst we have to wait for the national confirmation, I am absolutely confident that for Q2 we will move up to a solid C.
Thanks, Paul. Christine, I think you were down there the other day, weren't you? Tuesday.
Yes, I was, and I was pleased to hear a number of things actually down there. The first thing is that I don't think there's anything fundamentally wrong with our stroke pathway. So all the building blocks for having a clinically effective and efficient service are there. They have been hampered by lack of consultant cover, which, as Paul says, is improving. The therapies team and the nursing team are fully recruited, which does help the SNAP audit elements of having adequate numbers of nursing staff and also adequate therapy hours per day. There are still some gaps in speech and language therapy which will impact the audit results. I was really impressed by how motivated the team is to improve the pathway and the ideas they've got for making the pathway more effective and efficient. And I've also been impressed by how well the stroke network is working to support us and the patients in our catchment area. It seems to be a very effective network.
Yeah, it really does seem that sometimes you worry about some of these networks, but actually they've done a fantastic piece of work with it, haven't they, joining together. Colin.
Thanks, Chair. I'd just like to go back to Paul's initial comments, which was that seems to be the root cause of our difficulty was losing some consultants. Was this unexpected, or was it something that we were planning for? And more broadly, is it a lesson to be learned about how we manage that sort of situation?
It was unexpected, but there's nothing concerning around it. A couple of colleagues left for reasons I don't want to go into it in a public board meeting, but I can confirm that they were entirely understandable, and it was nothing to do with the service or any issues with our own trust. It was completely, it was just personal.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Richard.
Yeah, I said that we spent extensive time on the topic in QGC, and I can, essentially confirm everything that Paul has said, because there were people there from stroke. I agree with Paul that the causes for the attrition were all very different and unrelated. We challenged on two things. One was, should we have acted faster, because there was a genuine concern about continuity of service for our patients. Could we have acted faster? That's an open question. And the second thing is, we've got this dedicated stroke area, and apparently we've really had difficulty putting the right patients sometimes in this dedicated area, which might have impacted some of the experience. Those were the two things coming out of that conversation.
Thanks, Richard.
In terms of just responding to those 2 points, Chair, so the team did react. There was just no response, and we got the IDN, the network, in straight away, and worked through that with them, which has ended up with those colleagues from Stoke and one from Leicester supporting us. They did go out on searches for stroke consultants or stroke all the support. Can I just say that a couple of CVs that were put forward were not those that we would want to recruit, whereas the two that we've now got are very good, experienced clinicians. So I'm not worried about that at all. And in terms of your comment around beds, we by and large try to ring fence the stroke ward so that we don't have stroke patients elsewhere in the hospital. We have had pressures, as you know, around emergency care, and whilst we have had some medical patients on the stroke ward, we have always maintained a minimum ring fenced 2 pass-through beds. So there hasn't been any occasion when pass-through beds have been unavailable for stroke patients. Sorry, but hyperacute stroke.
Okay, thanks. Matthew.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to add a couple more reflections. I think Christine's comments on the stroke pathway, I'm sure she will have picked up the rehabilitation end of that pathway, is something that we know needs some further work, and there is an embryonic plan to bring rehabilitation into our oversight in due course. So that's something that's been worked on, which I think will streamline the pathway. I think, though, there is in our context for clinical sustainability, there is a fundamental issue nationally here of 50% of stroke consultant posts being vacant and very few trainees emerging. So one of the conversations I've had with with board divisional directors and with the network is what is the sustainable approach to addressing that 50% gap in consultants across the region and nationally, because we are certainly not alone in struggling to fill vacant posts, and recruitment from mainland Europe and other parts of the country, other parts of the world are obviously one part of the solution. There has to be, I think, a fundamental relook on how those posts are constructed and what the supply for medical staff coming to consult. So that's something we're also going to tackle, which obviously is going to be a longer piece of work with the region and national leaders.
Fine. The other two issues then that have been raised in relation to this are urgent and emergency care and elective. Any questions about that? Wakar.
Yeah, my question, Chair, is around elective care and the waiting lists. If you go down the appendices, you know, in terms of RTT waiting list is increased to 54,000, is over 54,700, and is growing month by month, and the long waits are over 29,000. So my question really is in terms of you know, theatre utilization. Are theatres being used to full capacity in terms of 100%, or do we have times when theatres are not being used? And if so, you know, can we, you know, is there any creative way of, you know, of increasing capacity to tackle non-elective surgery?
So, Chair, if I can come in,
yeah.
Can I just in terms of Wakar, you're absolutely right, based on what's in the report, but because of the timing of this report, although it says month 5, the figures for RTT due to validation, those figures were July's figures, not August figures. And if you look at the August figures, we've actually, for the first time, reversed that increase. So the overall waiting list for July has dropped to 54,681. So although it's only a small drop, every month we've seen a few thousand increase. So the reverse is quite significant. And we've also seen a reduction in August in the over 52 waiters to 5,914. So again, a small drop compared to the July figures, but again, it's a reverse in the increase that we've seen month on month. The increases that we've faced, as we've said in the report, is predominantly focused around the significant increase in referrals, and also as we're seeing increased new outpatient activity, that's leading to more patients being placed on the list. But that's a dynamic between the admitted and non-admitted, wouldn't change these figures, as this is the incomplete that contains the entirety of the list. In terms of your point at theatres, we have been doing some work looking at the number of procedures that we are going through, similar procedures pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. And we've also been looking at the number of procedures that we're getting through at the Vanguard, with the same surgeon, same procedure compared to those achieved through the when that person is operating in the existing theatre complex. And those two pieces of work have identified that we are not as efficient, if I can use that word, as we were pre-pandemic in the number of cases per list. And we're also seeing that the number of cases per list going through the Vanguard is smaller than the same surgeon doing the same procedures in the main operating theatres. So that is our main area of focus, along with increasing our new outpatient capacity. But I would just, I wouldn't say this is a turning point, but I would just, acknowledge that the August figures for both long and overall this size has reduced compared to normally we've seen quite a significant increase. But your point about or observation about whether theatres are being as used as effectively or not, the work that we've done over the last few weeks has identified areas where we should be able to increase procedures through existing funding lists.
Thanks, Paul. Let's have a look who I've got left. I can't. Got Matthew.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Paul. There is a lot of national focus on the number of patients that are waiting over 2 years, so 104 weeks for their clock to start on the 18-week pathway, or indeed to stop. Paul, it might just be worth just quickly summarising the picture that we anticipate for the end of March, and particularly the orthodontics challenge that we have, just so that board members are fully briefed on that. That's okay.
I'll turn myself on. So, yes, sure, we'll do that, Matthew. And David, just so you're aware, I don't know if you can see, but Anita's had her hand up for a bit. In terms of Matthew's point then, our prediction was that or our forecast for the long waiters, which is 104 weeks, was that we would probably expect to see that number rise to just under 800. And of that 800, just in round terms, roughly 50% would be related to orthodontics and what is classified as P5, P6, and that is patients who have said to us quite categorically that at the current time they wish to remain on the waiting list, but they do not want their procedure to proceed. And the remaining 400 are across the other specialties. And the work that we're doing and the commitment that we've made across the system is to eliminate the existing over 104 weeks, which is round about, excluding the P5, P6 patients and orthodontics, which is currently, if you exclude those, round about 40, as well as then having checked all the patients waiting over 78 weeks but less than 103 that will tip over into the 104 week plus bracket between now and the end of March. So we would eliminate the existing, and we would treat also all those that will tip over in the next 5.5 months. But we have made it very clear, obviously, that P5, P6, the patients who don't want their procedure, that they will remain until they change their mind. And we've equally made it clear that the orthodontic is a national commissioning issue, stroke SpecCom. This is not down to us, and just in case colleagues aren't aware, your average orthodontic referral is not like other new referrals. The average patient will have somewhere around about 23 to 26 appointments over a 3-year period, and there's a massive backlog nationally. And I don't, on this one, as you all know, I'm a major system partnership player, but on this one I really do think there is an issue about how this service has been across the country commissioned and organised.
I think, I mean, on the orthodontics thing, Paul, we need a solution. You know, the system needs a solution. At the moment, it's counting against us. So in all the national numbers, we are a massive outlier, and it's creating a whole load of problems for us nationally. So that indicates that, you know, nobody else has got the numbers of orthodontics that we've got waiting. That's the first thing. So whether it's a national SpecCom thing or not, I don't know. but nobody else is suffering like we are. But also, in reality, it's being counted against us. So we need to get the system to solve this problem. It's vitally important that we do it. The reputational damage to us is big and getting greater. Okay, let's move on. I've got Anita and Christine Blanchard. Anita.
Thanks, Chair. So a couple of questions. First of all, on the urgent emergency care, I think in the report it mentions that the attendances and the ambulance conveyances had gone up again. I wonder if you could share what's the percentage admittance figure, or is it a case of we're getting inappropriate ambulance conveyancing? Is that continuing to be a major part of the problem, or you know, how does that fit? Are the right people coming, I guess, and are we tracking that? My other question, I did have a question about orthodontics, so thank you for picking that one up. The other one I think was, I mean, obviously a lot of this data looks pretty bad. Helpfully, we have it towards the back of each section, the comparison across the West Midlands, the 13 trusts. And I'm really conscious of the fact that if you look at the West Midlands, of those 13 trusts, you know, quite a few of them are going to be urban and not really have the same kind of environment that we have. Are we, whether separately or whatever, are we measuring how well we're doing on this stuff compared to other trusts that are in a similar situation to us? And are we still bottom of the pack? And if we are, what is it that others are doing that we're not? Thanks.
So in relation to emergency activity, then I guess what I would say is that at the end of month 5, so the end of August, which this report refers to, then attendances, type 1 attendances in our 2 emergency departments are up 12%, and we would normally expect a kind of annual uplift to be running at around about 2.5–3%. And ambulance conveyances are up around 8%, and we would expect that to be in the region of 2 to 2.5%. So both overall activity to the 2 EDs is up significantly more than one would expect, as is ambulance conveyancing. If you look at our conversion rate, that has remained stable. So that could indicate that we are seeing a level of presentation in our emergency departments that is perhaps not appropriate. And if you look at a similar figure for that period, and sorry, the periods I'm comparing to are 1920, so the pre-COVID period, because it being appropriate to compare to COVID. Against that same period, attendances at the minor injuries unit are down 20%, and we're reporting we're not operating at a level of face-to-face appointments in primary care that we were pre-COVID. So I think those factors combined, plus we've seen an increase in children presentation, and I think if you combine all those factors, I think there is a increasing intolerance in not being able to see a doctor, if I can put it that way. And I think particularly for parents, I think that their worry is that they're looking for a clinician to see their child, and I think that's what we're seeing. And as I say, conversion is unchanged, and it remains at for the year our conversion rate is running at about 27.5%, and if you take the 1920 period, then our conversion rate in 1920 was 29.7%. So you can see our year to year then our conversion rate is down. Over the first 4 to 5 months of the year, our conversion rate has remained flat, whereas the activity has increased.
Okay, Christine.
To go back to orthodontics, so one of my roles in the Southwest region was supporting systems and providers that were struggling with 104-week waiters and 52-week waiters, and actually across the Southwest, oral surgery and orthodontics was a big proportion of those. So Devon and Dorset had, I think Devon, when I last looked, had something like 140 oral surgery patients waiting over 104 weeks, and as Paul said, it is to do with the relationship between the commissioners, primary care dentistry and secondary care. So when primary care dentistry essentially stopped during wave 1 of the pandemic because of aerosol generating procedures, a lot of that activity moved into secondary care, and that has displaced the capacity of hospital oral surgeons to deal with the orthodontic backlogs. So it is a huge problem. I think additional capacity does need to be commissioned. There does need to be a shift of some activity that's happening in hospitals now back into primary care and into intermediate care in the community as well. So it's something that a whole system needs to work on.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Simon?
Just one from me, David, if I may. Could we have an update on where we are with the medically fit patients for discharge, given that the figures we see there are over 2,000 for August, which is the 3rd month in a row that we've been at that, and how we're getting on with our system partners, because clearly this is a system issue to be getting people discharged when they're ready to be discharged, because obviously it's costing somebody an absolute fortune as well as causing us huge problems with flow.
Yeah. You happy for me to answer that, Chair?
Yeah.
So the working between the teams has improved significantly, particularly with the ongoing development of the integration programme, and there's far more transparency of information available to us now, so that we can see across the system exactly what's going on. We have agreed across the teams a daily discharge requirement, and I use the word requirement rather than target, as it's a requirement split between those patients who require a pathway discharge as against those who are simple home discharge, and we're also clear on the need to achieve at least 35% of those daily discharge requirements before 12 o'clock. The report in August that you're looking at, Simon, and what you will see for September will be a similar reading. The integration project is only in its fourth. This is its 4th week. We haven't had the level of traction that we would have liked to have seen by week 4, but it has started to improve this week, and we've seen a significant increase in the number of discharges and of those before 12 o'clock. I think the big challenge, and I don't want to sound kind of boring or repetitive, but I think the big challenge is around workforce, as we know that there are still issues for colleagues in the Health and Care Trust and the County Council in recruiting into both the 2-hour response and the reablement pathway. There's also a bit of a disconnect that we're trying to iron out, where we're pushing for our clinical teams to determine whether a patient can go home alone or needs support, and if the patient needs support, to stop at that point, so that the integration team can determine whether the patient needs a community bed or nursing home or home with reablement because once something gets into the mind of a patient or relative that, oh, you're going to a community bed, it's very difficult to change it to you're going home. And there has been, to be frank, some challenges we faced with our own teams wanting to prescribe the out of hospital pathway, and we're seeking to support colleagues to leave that decision to the integration team. Though equally, to be fair, we've also had some feedback from the integration team saying, why aren't you telling us which pathway this patient wants to go on? So there is a bit of a disconnect there. But I do believe the integration programme will deliver. It's not got as far as we would have expected in week 4, but this week we have seen an improvement.
Thank you. Thanks.
I'm going to wind up now, so if I can give Matthew the last to say.
Thanks. Thanks, Chair. And just building on, in response to Simon's question, I know that Richard always challenges this Finance and Performance Committee in relation to the quality of system working. And we touched earlier on the Worcestershire Executive Committee. Sitting under that is our Home Plus Worcestershire system-wide urgent emergency care delivery group. It met on Tuesday, and I think increasingly we are starting to see better clarity on the data from other system partners. As Paul said, we now know exactly how many hours in the community services, Pathway 1 team and urgent care to our response team that they are short of in terms of staffing gaps, and they're working to obviously fill those. So that level of clarity we haven't had before, and I do sense a better grip, albeit that it's not yet, Chair, to use your phrase, at the level of urgency that we absolutely need to eradicate when our ambulance handover delays, which, as Paul said, we've had a better week this week. So from an assurance perspective, I chair that group. I think we are starting to get the grip that is required, the right culture, but there's still a bit to do. So Simon, that I think is the wider picture on top of Paul's points. Clearly, we don't want to feel like we're Sisyphus, constantly trying to deal with this boulder. We actually want to get it to the top, roll over the top, and deal with something else. So the executive team is, as last week at the team meeting, we spent a lot of time on this. We spent time also with the urgent emergency care team themselves internally to address the points that Paul was raised. So this, along with those 104-week waiters that we touched on, remain the top 2 priorities from the executive team. Hence why they're referenced in the integrated performance review.
Okay. Can I just quickly go through the subcommittees before I try and pull all this together? Finance and Performance Subcommittee, anything you want to escalate to the board?
No escalation, David. I think the important topics have been discussed or will be discussed in other board meetings.
Yeah, thank you. Quality governance?
Essentially the same.
Are you running the whole trust now, Richard?
No, you are.
Yeah.
Well, actually Matthew is.
No, it's actually Matthew that's running it, as I'm told. Okay, sorry, quality governance, people and culture.
Well, I would like to just say something, and it's just that we recognise at the moment we're dealing with high levels of vacancies, high levels of staff sickness, and we've said this morning that it's really important that we release staff to attend the Bay meetings and stuff, but we also said at People and Culture it's really important we release staff to do the health and wellbeing talks and things, and I just think that at some point we need to prioritise what we're asking people to do, because if everything's a priority, nothing is. And I think we just need to be careful about how we are telling people to do everything when they are the ones that are still here and working. So it's just a bit of a plea for us to not be going at people and saying you must, when actually everyone's struggling and they are the people that are here holding the show together. So that's all I wanted to add from that. Sorry.
I agree with that, please, Julie. So what of those 3 issues you described, what priority order would the committee put them in?
I mean, always we've got to put patient care first. That has to be the overwhelming priority of everything we do. And I think that sometimes just being a bit smarter about not setting up separate health and well-being conversations, but doing it as part of existing ones. So you don't need to have a PDR conversation, then label something else a health and well-being conversation. Try and combine them when you're doing them, and just give people the permission to be a bit flexible in how they do it. They are all important, but I think we need to look after the staff that we've got here at the moment, asking them to do everything.
Okay, fair point. Matthew?
Yeah. Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Julie, for that point. And rest assured, we discuss this regularly in relation to messaging to our leaders, particularly in clinical divisions. And we held the People and Culture Directorate performance review meeting yesterday, where Tina's developed an excellent balanced scorecard for people and culture activity. But we did say there's an awful lot here that we're expecting people to focus on. Let's really try and squeeze this down to some key priorities. Otherwise, we will risk translating national must-dos into things that really turn people off at a local level. So to assure you, Julie, we're onto it.
Okay, so in terms of all of this, thanks for all of the work, and I don't underestimate the scale and nature of the work that people are engaged in to make it happen. But just in terms of the overall message, I think from the board is, first of all, urgent and emergency care continues to be our sort of #1 priority in the sense of resolving these deep-seated issues within it. And I recognise that often change takes slightly longer than people imagine it is when they start off. But it seems to me we've got most, if not all, of the building blocks in place now to be able to run a much more effective system for our patients. And taking it in what Paul has said, perhaps October will see the green shoots and November will see it working much better. And that's going to have to happen, and we're going to have to put all the efforts of the board behind that to make that a reality. In terms of the elective work, we are again towards the bottom of most league tables in all of this. Number one, getting the 104-week waiters done in a sustainable way is the first thing that we need to do. And to enable us to do all of that, we will need to increase the efficiency and effectiveness of our operating theatre utilisation and our bed utilisation, etc., all to make all of that happen. 104 is critical. And we must find a solution to the orthodontics issue. We can't have this wrapped around our neck for the next few years. It's a system responsibility. We need to make sure that's taken to do that. And good to see the way in which the system, the clinical networks have rallied round to help us with our problems in relation to stroke. Good to hear the kind of the excellence that we know that our nursing and therapy staff exhibit in that service. Let's work hard to get the recruitment right for all of this, and I recognise Paul's comment that he's expecting the next quarter SNAP results to be significantly better than the D that they are now, and getting that sustainable is the critical part of it. Okay, thanks very much for all of that. Then let's move on now to safest staffing report. Adult nursing, and this will be Paula?
Yes, correct. Thank you, Chair. So to thank you, Julie, for your points there around staffing and what we're being asked to do, what we're asking them to do throughout their working day. We are 19 months into a pandemic. We've got winter looming. We've got high sickness rates, not just from COVID. And we've obviously got some high vacancy rates. So with all of that taken into consideration, we have also ensured that we've maintained our fill rate through bank and agency. So again, really good maintenance of those figures. I think from the well-being conversations that we're having, you're right, they need to be part and parcel of ensuring that they're not just a separate entity and that they can be combined with something else. You've all frozen. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Oh, it's all right. You've all frozen on my screen. And just on the note of, we've got HCA vacancies and we're desperately trying to encourage people to become HCAs, is the fact that we've got the Cavil Trust involved in our trust. Given the fact that the universal credit has had an impact on our healthcare assistants in that reduction, so again looking at how we can support our healthcare assistants and our nurses throughout that. So I just wanted to say that we are working on our recruitment, we're working on maintaining our fill rates and filling our vacancies, and obviously more importantly looking at the health and well-being of our staff, especially working into a winter that could be seen as quite hard. So I'll take questions if anybody has got any.
Thank you. Any questions? No, all the reports noted. Let's talk about midwifery.
Yeah, Justine's on the line, Chair.
Justine, where are you?
Yeah, good morning. Thanks, Paula. I just want to highlight a few things. It's remained challenging, so we've not been able to change our assurance level within this report. Just a few key things. We've been busier than usual this August. I think the pandemic has made some of our seasonal variation a little bit different, and we were as busy in August as we are in September, which is, as I say, unusual. So our sickness is down, our turnover remains below the trust target. We've increased our fill rates, you'll see through the report, and we've had some of our new starters commence. So we've continued to have a healthy reporting culture, and no harm was noted within month. We then started to plan how we were reporting upwards, and have now thought about introducing 3 daily sit reps, which are shared with the Capacity Hub and the senior team as well, which we have implemented, piloted throughout September. We did have a reduction in the expected new starters that we expected 17, but actually we then on re-evaluation could see that we were likely to only see 12 of those 17. So we're already going back out to advert for those posts quickly. We want to turn that around as quickly as possible. And of course we've got an increase in our establishment for our Ockenden money. So whilst it looks like we've got an increased number of vacancies, the 8 of those new posts that we're going to advertise are an increase to our establishment. So I don't want people to feel concerned that we are worsening our position, and actually those posts will support us to be able to release staff to attend their role specific training, which is a really good thing to be able to do going forward. So I'll pause there and take any questions.
Thank you. Simon.
Justine, what was the issue with the 17 into 12? How did we get that wrong?
So what tends to happen is the student midwives all qualify at the same time. They generally make multiple applications to multiple units, and then once they get all their offers, they make their final decision about where they want to go. I think there's something we can do, and we're learning with our HR business partners how we can better work together with recruitment to keep in contact with new recruits, so that we can try and convince them that our unit is the best place for them to come, even if they haven't trained with us. But it's not unusual, Simon, and we'll look out for that in our next round of recruitment. Paula?
Thank you. So absolutely, our onboarding is absolutely crucial to keeping our staff keyed into working here, especially with some of our gaps with regards to notices from other trusts. So we are working to make sure that individual units and units within units are onboarding and keeping in touch with our recruits.
Okay, thank you. Report noted. Let's then move on to the Maternity Services Improvement Plan update. Justine.
Thanks, Chair. So I think the board are very cited on the background of the requirement for the Service Improvement Plan. It was signed off in July. Over obviously the summer, it's difficult to make significant progress, although you'll see in the report some of the things that we have achieved so far. So we planned a launch event on the 29th of September, and I'll come on to that shortly. We appointed our leads and agreed the reporting structure. We've introduced a monitoring tool for induction of labour because that was one of our significant problems, and we have discussed the launch of the Service Improvement Plan and started to discuss the plan itself with our teams through our divisional briefings and also at my monthly Q&A session that I have with the staff. We've identified and have the funding agreed for the posts that were outlined in the report, and also you'll see listed within that report are a number of actions that we've taken that fall out of our overarching action plans that we created following all of the engagement events that we've had over the last 9 months. So the launch event was planned for the 29th and it did go ahead. We had a good turnout considering we've got some of the issues we have got in terms of staffing. Staff came on their days off, their annual leave, which was really good to see. We gave a presentation about the plan and then we set up 3 work streams, breakout rooms that people could join and talk to the work stream leads, make pledges around their wish to join that work stream and take those plans forward. We've got another session booked on each of our other sites to make sure that we reach everybody, and one of our key, I suppose, events is happening on the 11th of November, which is our first kind of kick-off around continuity again. You know, that's been one of our biggest challenges. So that big launch will happen on the 11th of November, and we've made specific requests to certain members of staff who have been particularly interested in that and that model of care previously and how it is working or not working. So I'll stop there and take any questions.
Thanks. Any questions in relation to this? Simon.
Yeah, just I guess wearing my maternity safety so champion leave for the board. Justine, I know that everybody was written to individually as well with the plan, so it's had a good sort of launch. Did you get any negativity? Was there any sort of staff who are less happy to see it than others? And has there been a good take up on the 3 work streams? Because that sounds like a good initiative.
Yeah, so we chose to send it out to everybody because obviously we'd had feedback before that communication sometimes is a challenge. I haven't had any negative feedback about the launch at all. If anything, it was very positive on the day. Some people came not really totally knowing what to expect and were concerned that it might be another event where people raised lots of issues and lots of problems, and were pleasantly surprised that it was a very positive event looking forward, and felt that things were starting to move in the right direction. So that was really good feedback.
Thanks. And the work streams are well supported, are they?
They are. Some were more, so we gave people the choice to go to either the wellbeing work stream, the clinical pathway work stream, or the leadership and development. And I have to say the uptake in the wellbeing and the leadership work streams on the day was much greater, the attendance, although that gave us almost the ability to a focus group really in the clinical pathway work stream on continuity. We only talked about that in that event, and I stayed within that group because I felt that was probably where I was best placed on the day. Knowing that there's a big launch on the 9th of November as well, we know that that's going to be a very focused and probably quite a challenging day, but with great output, I'm sure. We do need to generate that enthusiasm for the continuity work stream, but the teams were already coming up with some fantastic ideas around wellbeing and leadership and development opportunities going forward.
Thanks. Richard.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks, Justine. And you know, we discussed this also extensively in QGC, of course. But I was really interested in the November launch of continuity. So what are you aiming at then? What's really the goal? What do you think is the desired outcome?
So the objective for that particular work stream is that we start to put our plan together for delivering the pathway to be the default pathway for all women eligible for that pathway by 2023. So it's a blank piece of paper, really. We want the team to, yes, we've got an overarching objective. Yes, we've still got 6 teams who are functioning at the moment and starting to function very, very well. But taking all that into account, we need the team now to talk to us about how they see this moving forward, how they see that model developing. What do they not maybe understand about the current way in which the model's been rolled out? What do they think we should do differently? But it's for them to shape the model and the how we operationalise this model going forward now.
Okay, thanks. Justine, is there a mechanism by which we're measuring the sort of, I don't know what the staff think of all of this, a cultural survey, something of that nature, something like that going off underneath all of this?
Yeah, Paul and I have talked about how we could measure this, and we have been in touch with some other organisations around how they have measured their culture. We need to progress that discussion and pick that up, because we have had a cultural survey in the past completed as part of the NHSEI work around maternity improvement, but I think it's pretty outdated now, to be honest. It was done prior really to the larger rollout of continuity, and I feel things would probably be very different.
Okay, thanks. Matthew.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Justine. Given that following the CQC inspection back in December 20, we had our rating reduced, and as a consequence, we were invited into the NHS Maternity Improvement Programme. Can you give a sense to the board of how that's benefited us? Perhaps Paula might add to as well, because we were, very keen when the launch event happened in April to work very closely with the National Chief Midwife, and clearly helpful for the board to get a sense of how that's contributing to the improvement work or not.
Okay, so we've had the first sort of preliminary report, I suppose we could call it, and Scott tells us that he's now moving into the diagnostic phase, so we will expect another report fairly soon. Reassuringly, the first draft of his report didn't raise any concerns that we hadn't already identified through our own engagement events. And Scott has continued to, visit the unit on average about every 6 to 8 weeks. His time is limited, and he acknowledges that, so that he isn't doing as much with us as he'd like to be able to do. He's now been offered a full-time post with NHSEI, so he will be spending more time with us from February onwards. I think he's hearing the same narrative that we've heard. He's obviously reinforcing some of the work that we are doing. He's communicating with the staff so that they're aware of what he does, and we have recently shared that report with the staff, so that there's total transparency in what Scott has already identified. But there was nothing new, Matthew. I mean, you've had sight of that report, and we've progressed nearly all of the things that he's identified, with just really one major thing outstanding, which is we do still have our midwifery team scrubbing in theatre, and that is a bit of a thorny issue that we really do have to resolve, because that's poor use of midwifery time, to be frank.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair, can I just come back on that just to confirm what you said? So we're now 6 months past the launch event and we still don't have the diagnostic report.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Could I come in there, Chair?
Yeah.
What they're claiming, the diagnostic is from the beginning, literally from the 6 months that would be ongoing. I think it's an unfortunate term that they use in the diagnostic phase, and that's feedback I will give to Scott and the team, as Justine's quite rightly said, it's nothing new that we haven't already discovered ourselves. I've given honest feedback around the delay and the non-attendance as we thought we would have through a maternity improvement advisor, and I think that's something we can take back when we present in January to the to NHSIE with regards to where we're at from a maternity perspective. But it seems to be like a very ongoing phase and not just a time sort of strict phase. I think it's just the terminology, if I'm honest.
I'm sure there are ways of explaining this that I could understand. But however, it just strikes me that we've done a diagnostic because we've got a plan. You know, we've decided what we think the problem is. Presumably they're going to tell us whether they think we're right or not after we've done it and after we've implemented the plan. It seems a bit backwards going forwards, but you know, I understand it. But as long as we're aligned, as long as they're not going to come up with stuff that, you know, we haven't even thought of. I mean, my question in all this would be, so when do I get CQC back and get me rating back up?
And to be fair, Chair, as well, they are with us until our rating changes. So we do need to think about that, absolutely. And I think we are aligned. I think that he hasn't discovered anything that we hadn't already identified ourselves. But because of the rating group dropping, they are duty bound to be with us.
Yeah. So when do I get it up? When can I call CQC in and get it up? Justin.
Okay. I think we should be calling them fairly soon.
Justin.
Not quite that soon, hopefully. But let's get some of the work streams really in, good engagement, some good outputs from those work streams, and then I think we'll all be feeling a lot more confident. I think in terms of their exit criteria being an improved rating with CQC, that is, I believe, under review at the moment. So we may see a different exit criteria.
Yeah, I'm interested in that when I'm going to get my rating up. I mean, when do you think you'll be in a position where we think we'll be able to call them back in again? I won't put you on the spot now. No, I won't put you on the spot, Justin. But what I would say is we need some focus on this because it'll drag on forever. It sounds as if we're not careful. We'll just beat ourselves up forever. So I think so what I would say to the Paula and the division really is we need a thing that we're aiming for when we think we'll be in a place where that rating can go up. So I'll leave that bit of action with you. Anita.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So I completely, I share the concern about the delay in getting the report from the improvement team, because I think there is a slight danger, I guess, that we go out with these work streams and start a load of work, and then they throw another one into the mix, and it makes us look messy, and it makes us look like it's not joined up. But I mean, I know that's out of our control. But I actually just wanted to acknowledge the work that's been done. I actually thought this was a really nice paper. I really appreciated the honesty. You weren't dodging the difficult stuff. I thought it was helpful. There were a couple of bits I didn't quite understand, but I mean, we can take that offline. But fundamentally, I thought I appreciated the honesty. I acknowledge the work that's been done. I know it's not been easy. I know this has been a really difficult journey, and I know that, the trouble with this is an oil tanker here, and it's going to be bumpy. So you've got a little bit of engagement now, then all it's going to take is somebody feels you're not listening to them, and it's going to be 2 steps forward and 1 step back with a lot of this, and it's going to take a bit of time. So I love David's idea that we can say we're definitely going to be sorted in 6 months or whatever it might be, but just want to acknowledge. I think we're making some progress here. So well done.
Thanks, Anita. Christine.
Thanks, Anita.
Christine.
Thanks. Justine, I may be displaying a bit of ignorance and being a bit behind the times here, but I'm not sure whether MatNeo collaboratives still exist and whether we're part of one, because they used to be a really good way of learning from others and sharing best practice and things. Do they still exist?
They do still exist. Obviously we used to have a regional meeting about once every, I'm going to say bi-monthly, and they were really helpful to share some of that learning across the system. It kind of paused through COVID, and there has been maybe one, possibly two meetings in the last 6 months, but we're certainly not back to where we were before in terms of that process.
Yeah, they just stop you from getting too inwardly focused, don't they, and help you to look out and learn from what others are doing.
Yeah. And also, share some of the learning that we've had, because not everybody has been through some of the issues that we have been. We're further on our continuity journey than most, and some people have, quite rightly been able to learn some of the lessons that we've learned in terms of our rollout and some of the criticism that we've had.
Okay, thanks very much. We note for assurance, and I think reflecting what Anita said, really, thanking you for the work that's been done, and there is undoubtedly, certainly from this perspective, some progress being made, and I think we would like some kind of end date in terms of the CQC rating. Thank you. Okay, let's move on. Talking of learning, let's move on then to learning from deaths.
Thank you, Chair. So this report retains an assurance level of 6 because both our SHMI and HSMR are within the expected range, and there are no red flags for mortality within any particular diagnostic category. Of note, the proportion of deaths in our SHMI group that occur out of hospital is a little higher than average. We believe that this is because we've got good processes in place for identifying patients who are approaching the end of their life and fast-tracking their discharge home to their chosen place of death. Our mortality information working group is now set up and working quite well. I think as I get a bit more established in the organisation, I may want to look at the formatting of this report to give a bit more of more granular detail in line with national recommendations, and the information working group will support me in doing that. The other thing of note is that as we are becoming fully recruited in our medical examiner role, we will be able to introduce a rota so that deaths get reviewed more promptly. That discussion happens with the junior doctor who's responsible for certifying the death, which will improve both our death certification and the timeliness of structured judgment reviews where they're appropriate to look at the deaths in more detail. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Christine. You've come in at a particular moment in time that people have, I don't know, whether sweated blood or whatever it is, that we've had endless conversations with this board about this, and you seem to have got in just to put the ball in the back of the net, as they say. So, well done.
Yeah, I mean, it's all credit to my predecessors, who've done some really good work on this.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments in relation to that? Okay, we'll note it for assurance. Right, let's move on then to Res Disability and Gender Pay Gap Report 2021.
Thank you, Chair. So these are 3 statutory reports that we're required to publish on our website. They were considered by the People and Culture Committee this month, and quite a bit of discussion around them. We covered some of the points in the earlier top agenda item with Jazz here, but a couple of points just to draw out that we haven't yet covered around the workforce disability. The issue is our data quality, in that if you look at the difference between the number of people we've got registered with a disability on our ESR system compared to the declaration in the staff survey, there's quite a significant difference. So we're working with the Disability Network and on how we can gain the confidence of people to update their records, so we've got an accurate picture around that. As the other point of discussion was around the gender pay award and the discrepancy being driven by the Clinical Excellence Awards with fewer female applications. So I haven't had a chance to speak to Christine yet, but we'll be working with Christine, and Jules Walton has already volunteered for us to do a focus piece of work on looking at how we can improve that. For the next 2 years, however, on the CA Awards, we will be taking the national approach and just splitting those across the consultant body for those expressing interest. We have got some time to work through our plan. So happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Anita.
Yes, just one comment really. On the res data, the report, which thank you for it. That there were a couple of bits that showed that there had been improvement in terms of the number of the likelihood of white staff being appointed from a shortlisting compared to BAME staff, and also formal disciplinary. Now, it's great to see that progress, so well done. The only thing I would say is the disciplinary has gone from 3.42 to 0.49. I'm sure this is in your minds too, but there is a real danger that what's happened here is that we've made people fearful of putting a person of colour into disciplinary, and it's actually gone the wrong way. Now, we clearly don't want people of colour to be discriminated against, and that this process is initiated before white members of staff, but we equally want to make sure it is a real sanction. So I'm sure you're working on it, but great to see an improvement. But down where it's half as likely as for a white member of staff, that to me says we need to get it back up the other way again. Thanks.
Thanks, Anita. No, I agree. There's a statistical difference on those two. Is something we need to understand, and we're working through.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions, comments on that? Fine, we need to approve this report, I think. Approved. Thank you. Audit and Assurance Committee report.
Sorry, yes. I'll take it as read. I think that it was a bit of a busy month in terms of getting the value for money audit out and published, but we've had some progress on terms of our internal audit. A couple of reports have come back with significant assurance, which is lovely to hear. If you go back a couple of years ago, that wasn't happening, so I think that's positive progress. We have had a value for money audit submitted. There are 3 recommendations, which I think has been rehearsed in other fora, and I know there's an action plan in place to try and make sure we make some progress on those. But I think I'd say evidence of progress, still a fair bit of work to do, and we on audit will be keeping our eyes on it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any questions, comments? Very good, thank you very much. That ends the meeting in public. Thank you for your... Oh, sorry, Simon wants to ask a question.
Just one point, David. I noted from our excellent comms team in the course of this meeting, they tweeted that today is Allied Health Professionals Day. I just wondered if you'd like to record the thanks of the board to our allied health professionals before the meeting closes.
Thanks for that, Simon. You're always there as a human being to tip me off. Thanks, yes, and absolutely. I mean, I have to say that, having been around quite a long time, that the quality of our allied health professionals in this trust is fantastic. They are really an extraordinary group of people who do a fantastic job, and it's nice to have a day where at least we can recognise, albeit I have to be reminded to do it, Simon. We're to recognise the contribution that they make, and if you look at those big ticket items that we've been talking about, whether it be urgent and emergency care, stroke, rehabilitation, all of those things that are key to improving the service to our patients. They're going to play and will play an increasingly important role in improving the quality of service for our patients. So thank you to all our agencies. Really appreciate the work that you do. Okay, on that note, on that positive note, I'll bring this meeting to an end. We're now going to go straight into a meeting of the corporate trustees of the Worcester Acute Hospitals Charity. You'll have the papers in front of you. We've got apologies for absence. We've got any apologies, Rebecca?
No, noted, Chair, as per the...
Okay. Declaration of interest on the website, minutes of the previous meeting. Are they a reasonable reflection? Good. Yes, they are. A report of the Charitable Funds Committee. Colin, do you want to say anything about this?
Thanks, Jim. Just to highlight a couple of issues. One is to refer to the GIF committee considering the draft final accounts for the Charitable Trust. We looked at them. They seem to be in good shape. We made recommendation for a couple of minor amendments, and we're looking forward to getting the finalised and audited accounts in November, which will then report to the board. And the other thing is to highlight the fact we've got grant funding to make a short-term appointment of a member of staff to take on engagement, so to act as a sort of interface between our people and the various well-being projects that are on the go at the moment. And I think that's a really good appointment, and we're looking forward to that yielding some real help to our people.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Any other comments? Right, thank you for that. That's noted. We're now breaking until 1:15, where we'll reconvene for the private section of the board meeting. Thank you.